Principal sir, we'll get started.
Yes, ma'am, we could start.
Thank you, sir. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good morning to each and every one of you joined us in the webinar on National Education Policy 2020, organized by the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of Indian Academy Degree College Autonomous. I am Sushma, member of IQAC, who will take you through this thoughtful Thursday of learning. Indian Academy Degree College Autonomous is one of the premier institutions in the gamut of higher education. We at Indian Academy have always been receptive and responsive to our stakeholders. It is the need of the hour that we fragment the National Education Policy 2020 with special focus on higher education by listening to the learned and eminent personality who is amongst us, Dr. Jeevan Kumar. Before I proceed any further, it's my pleasant duty to bid you all a genial welcome. I'm delighted to extend our gracious welcome to Dr. Jeevan Kumar, Professor and former Chairman, Department of Political Science, Bangalore. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sushma.
Yes, sir. I'm deeply honored to welcome Dr. Jerome Xavier, Principal, Indian Academy Degree College Autonomous. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's my pleasure on behalf of Indian Academy to welcome all the participants from our Paramarsh mentee colleges, learned audience from across the nation, and my dear colleagues at Indian Academy Degree College Autonomous. May I now request Dr. Jerome Xavier to introduce our guest speaker to the audience.
Please make it brief, Dr. Jerome, as brief as you can.
Certainly, I'll be very brief, Doctor. At the outset, I would like to express our gratitude to the Chairman of Indian Academy Education Trust, Dr. Somsekhar, and the COO of Indian Academy Group of Institutions, Dr. Parthasarathy, for their constant encouragement and support, particularly in organizing this webinar on National Education Policy 2020. It is an undeniable fact that universal access to qualitative education is key to the economic growth, social justice, equality, scientific advancement, and cultural preservation. Our nation has a new education policy after 35 years. Having the highest youth population in the world, it's imperative that we have high quality education which can shape the future of our country. The new education policy revisions and revamps the former one based on the pillars of access, equity, quality, accountability, and affordability to facilitate the growth and development of youth of our nation. The new policy can be interpreted in the way everyone perceives. However, it is important to know the implications and impact of this policy to our society from the coming academic year. As academicians, we are awaiting to hear from a well-known and eminent personalities to throw light and enable us to have better understanding of the new education policy 2020. We have with us Professor Dr. Jeevan Kumar, who was a former chairman of the Department of Political Science in Bangalore University. Dr. Jeevan Kumar attained superannuation from the university in the year 2016, after which the government of Karnataka, having seen his credibility, has honored him with the professor's cadre at the Karnataka State Rural Development and Panchayat University, Gadag. At present, he is also the Secretary of Karnataka Regional Branch of Indian Institute of Public Administration, Bangalore. Apart from being a professor of political science and was former chairman of the department, he served as the director of Dr. Ambedkar Study and Research Center at Bangalore University. He held the post of director for the Center for Gandhian Studies in the same university. He was Dean of Faculty of Arts, Academic Council member, Syndicate member, Senate member, and in a very special way, he was also appointed as Special Officer to the Vice Chancellor when he was at service. His areas of academic specialization includes development politics and administration, Indian government and politics, and Gandhian studies. He was a Fulbright Fellow in the USA in 2003 and a Fellow of Salzburg Seminar in Austria in the year 1997. He was invited to deliver guest lectures at the United Nations University, Tokyo, Japan in 2007 as well as in 2008. In the year 2011, he was a guest lecturer at George Mason University. Sir has presented papers at the international conferences, seminars, both in India and abroad, in USA, Germany, Bangalore, Vice Chairman for Sarvodaya International Trust, Karnataka Chapter, Bangalore, member of the Executive Committee, Gandhi Center for Science and Human Values, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Bangalore, Accreditation Ambassador for Paramarsh Program of UGC of Mount Carmel College, and member of various educational institutions and a consultant. In addition to this, personally, I know Professor Jeevan Kumar as an intellectual who is very genuine, honest, and committed to the cause of higher education. It is our privilege to listen to such a wonderful personality, an eminent person in the field of political science, to interpret the new Education Policy 2020 to all of us here. A hearty welcome to you, sir. Over to Professor Jeevan Kumar.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jerome.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be associated with any program of the Indian Academy. I have been to Indian Academy on numerous occasions. I'm familiar with the top management. I recall the affection that Dr. Somshekar and Dr.E.Jerome Xavier particularly have shown to me. When I was requested to share my thoughts on the new education policy, which is currently on the front burner of the nation, so to speak, I immediately accepted the offer, partly because of my affection for Indian Academy, but also because the major dimensions of the NEP are currently before us. It's a policy. Things are happening both at the Government of India level and at the state government level as far as coming up with the implementation plans are concerned. But before all of this happens, it's important that we engage with the NEP very seriously, since we're all stakeholders in higher education. It's important that we are familiar with the document, first of all. It's important that we understand the vision behind the document, the fundamental principles. My little interaction with academics tells me that we are familiar with some of the dimensions of the NEP, but we are not, quite a few of the people I met have told me, no, we've not actually seen the document, we've not even read the document, we're familiar with the major thrust and so on. So for those of you in the audience who have not had the time to peruse the document, I'm going to spend some time explaining or presenting before you the vision of this document. I'll also spend some time, elaborating on the introduction, elaborate introduction that you find in the document in the form of an overview. And then I'll also present before you the fundamental principles behind the document. Here I will spend a little time. Dr. Jerome also requested me to, at the beginning, look at the present an overview of the and perspective of the entire document. So that I will do initially. And then I'll zero in on higher education, because all of us are stakeholders in higher education. And there I will present before you some of the current problems that are there before us in higher education. With specific reference to higher education, the policy has a vision. The policy makes several recommendations. We must look at these very carefully, all of us who are involved in higher education. There's a reference to research too. I'll very briefly look at research. But all of you would be interested in knowing what my concerns are as far as this very important policy document is concerned. And I won't disappoint you here because I have my own opinion on this particular document. There are several points of, several good points, visionary points that you find in the document. They need to be appreciated, but I also have concerns, and I've reduced my critical concerns to, I think, 9 or 10. I'll also share those concerns with you. And once we are through, I hope there's sufficient time for us to engage in a discussion, because I'm keen on knowing what you feel, not only about the NEP and the major thrust of the NEP. I'll also be interested in knowing whether you share these concerns of mine. So I'm beginning with the vision. This is the first part of my presentation. I want you to look at this very carefully, if possible, read it very carefully. I may be rushing through this, but it's important for us to understand the vision behind this document, because this has been prepared very carefully. And if we are able to understand the vision, where it comes from and where exactly it intends to take us, I think we'll be able to understand the content of the NEP better. I'll read out a few important points here. The NEP envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos. Now, this figures very prominently several times in the report. You find a reference to the Indian ethos. You find a reference to the fact that we had a very grandiose Indian ethos, which takes us back several millennia. So in the vision, you find a reference to an education system that is rooted in Indian ethos, and which says that this earlier helped in transforming the country. Why shouldn't the same ethos, if you're able to bring it back, why can't we ensure that this Indian ethos can transform India into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society? This it can do by providing high quality education to everybody, and in the process, India, in course of time, can become a global knowledge superpower. Now, these are grandiose terms, and it's important that we are able to absorb the vision behind this document. Please take a look at the second point that I've emphasized here. The policy envisages that if India is to become a global knowledge superpower, no, please go back one slide, please, Pandian, one slide back. Yeah, if we are to become a global knowledge superpower, then our curriculum and the pedagogy must be changed. And what should the curriculum and pedagogy be focused upon? And this second point emphasizes here, we need to have a deep sense of respect towards fundamental duties, towards constitutional values, bonding with our nation, and as also being aware of roles and responsibilities in a changing world. So look at the national and the international focus that the NEP is giving us. Next slide, please. You can now move, Pandian. Can you move on? Yeah. So the vision continues to tell us that among all those who are students in this higher education system, they should inculcate a deep-rooted pride in being Indian, not just in thought, also in spirit, in intellect, and in deeds. And in order to do all of this, the vision says, vision wishes to develop knowledge, skill, something that we need to be conscious about. And if in the world India is going to have the largest number of young people, well, we've got to look at how we are going to teach them. We're going to look at how they are going to be employed, and we've got to ensure that they have the adequate skills to be employed once they are ready to take up employment. So in that process, there's a reference in this document to SDG 4. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Right on top, among the 18-19 goals, goal number 4 speaks of the fact that all countries have to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, and in the process promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And the deadline for this agenda to be fulfilled is 2030. This whole UN agenda was initiated in 2015. Already 5 years, we have already crossed 5 years. We just have about 10 years left. In the course of the next 10 years, it's important that each of the 19 goals in the SDGs have to be taken up seriously. And then in the new NEP, they're taking up specifically goal number 4. Next slide, please. If goal 4 is to be taken very seriously, it will require, and look at the terminology that is used here, the entire education system will have to be reconfigured. So obviously our educational pundits, our educational experts have looked at goal number 4 very carefully, and they have realized that if this goal is to be realized in the space of the next 10 years or so, our entire education system will have to be reconfigured. And that term I would draw your attention to, because when we look at the NEP, you will see what kind of reconfiguration and revamping of education entirely, both from the primary, secondary, and to the higher education levels, this vision document is actually talking about. Why is goal 4 of the UN SDGs so very specific that education should be taken very seriously, should be transformed? Well, this document has grasped the essence of divide and so on. Now, all of this, if we look at it from the employment scenario, they are saying that with all of these developments, many jobs, especially the unskilled jobs worldwide, would be taken over by machines. And I'm sure you're conscious of these things already happening. You're familiar with driverless cars, you're familiar with robotics, you're familiar with the fact that we human beings can be replaced fairly easily thanks to the 4th industrial revolution, thanks to the entry of robotics and artificial intelligence. And this is a major concern that you find reflected in the introduction of the new education policy. Next slide, please, Pandyan. And therefore, there is need for a skilled workforce. So this is to be understood here. From our higher education institutions, we have to produce skilled workforces. Whatever kind of institutions we are running, be they whatever kind of courses the higher education institutions are offering, all of them must be able to produce skilled workforces. And our youngsters, once they graduate, once they complete their post-graduation, should have a good understanding of mathematics, computer science, data science. No saying that I'm an art student, I'm a humanities student, I know nothing about mathematics or computer science or data science and so on. So look at the combination that the new education policy is talking about here. A skilled workforce will know the rudiments of mathematics, computer science, data science, and so on, and in conjunction with multidisciplinary abilities across the sciences. And this is where social science and humanities also come into the picture. So if all of this is taught to the students right from the degree level and up to the and beyond to the postgraduate level, well, we will be able to produce what is defined here as a skilled workforce. This introduction is also reference to the major challenges before the world and before us: climate change, increasing pollution, depleting natural resources, shift in how we meet the world's energy requirements, water, food, sanitation needs, and all of this says in the sciences of biology, chemistry, physics, agriculture, climate science, and in social sciences. Now, we require a skilled labor. So products of specific scenarios need to be conscious of that. This document also says that the growing emergence of epidemics and pandemics will also call for collaborative research. We need to look at research in infectious disease management, pandemic management, and so on. Social issues that are thrown up by the pandemic, that will call for multidisciplinary learning. And the document anticipates a growing demand for humanities, a growing demand for arts as India moves towards becoming a developed country. Currently, we are the third largest economies in the world. But as we graduate in this area also, there'll be a growing demand for humanities as well as arts. Next slide, please. The introduction goes on to say that the employment landscape, the global ecosystem is being modified, is being transformed very quickly. And therefore, it says that our children should not only be taught knowledge, they should also learn how to learn. And I've underlined this word how here because the document tells us exactly how we can teach the right skills and knowledge to our youngsters. So education, it says, must move towards less content. You may reduce the content of the syllabus, reduce the content of curricula, but then reduction may not really matter so much as emphasizing the fact that we should teach our youngsters how to think critically, how to solve, how to resolve problems, how to be creative, how to be multidisciplinary. And therefore, in the first bullet point where I've underlined how, the second bullet point explains what exactly we should be able to inculcate in our young minds, teach them how to think critically, teach them to solve problems, teach them how to be creative, teach them how to be multidisciplinary, teach them how to innovate, to adapt, to absorb new material. And all of this is to be done in novel and changing fields. So look at the emphasis that the NEP is making here. And I think stakeholders here, teachers, need to also start reflecting already. Are we doing this? Are we teaching just for the sake of teaching? Are we teaching because the syllabus has to be completed? Are we teaching because the syllabus says, every paper says so many hours you have to teach and so on? So are we looking at it merely in terms of completion of the syllabus? Or also are we simultaneously, while dealing with the syllabus, are we equipping our young minds to do all the things that the document expects us to be doing as good teachers? Next slide, Pandian. Next slide. So therefore, to move to pedagogy in the introduction, it says education must be made more experiential. And I'm sure most of you will agree with me that right now it is not as experiential as it should be. And wherever it is not at all experiential, there's need for us to make it more experiential. So pedagogy must make education more experiential. It should make it more holistic, integrated, inquiry-driven, discovery-oriented, learning-centered, discussion-based. And look at all these hyphenated words which are so important for us in the field of education to seriously reflect upon, make it flexible. Pedagogy must be flexible. And at the end of the day, last but not the least, the pedagogy that we are utilizing must be enjoyable, not only for those on the other side of the classroom, but also for us. Do we enjoy what we are teaching? And at the end of the day, at the end of every class, will students say before we leave the classroom, sir, we found your class, or madam, we found your class enjoyable. That I think again is not happening. So this document is saying we should ensure that the pedagogy makes learning, teaching and learning as enjoyable as possible. In order to do this, what should the curriculum include? And look at the dimensions here: basic arts, crafts, humanities, games, sports, fitness, languages, literature, culture. The PPT has become very small. Can it be blown up once again, Pandian? So if all of this can be incorporated into the curriculum simultaneously, irrespective of the course, that's very important. I'll come back to this in a little while when I look at higher education specifically, the multidisciplinary dimension. That's very important. So simultaneously, if you're doing some of this, we already are doing. I'm conscious of that. Indian Academy is also doing some of this, and thanks to UGC, thanks to NAC, some of these dimensions are brought into it: sports, fitness, and some of these dimensions. But simultaneously, irrespective of the course that the students are doing, can all of this be included in the curriculum? And I'm repeating these points: basic arts, crafts, humanities, games, sports, fitness, languages, literature, culture, values. In addition to what you're actually seriously interested in, you could be a student of science, you could be a student of mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, or you could be a student of the arts and the humanities. But does our course currently include all these dimensions? And I'm sure you'd agree with me that it does not. Some of them have been brought into it under some kind of a pressure, but then all of them have not been. And therefore, the NEP is telling us that if all of these are brought into the curriculum, then this will develop all aspects and capabilities of learners and make education well-rounded. This term again figures very frequently. Are we producing well-rounded citizens? Are we producing useful citizens? And are we making learning fulfilling to the learner? These dimensions, these words are repeated very frequently in the NEP, and I would come back to this a little later. Can we move on, please? Again, this slide is too small. Can we move on to the next slide?
No, sir, before you proceed,
yeah,
To help you with the full screen of the PPT,
Yeah.
can you please check in the people list, Mr. Pandian, microbiology, sir? Do you find him there, the people list?
Let me look. I wanted Pandian to be with me throughout. He ran away, is it?
Okay, okay. He is with us. He is the one
Yeah.
projecting
Please,
the screen for you.
yeah, please keep him there because if he goes, then I'm in deep trouble.
Not at all. He is there with us.
Dr. Jerome told me that he'll keep him there.
Yes, sir. He is there. So
Yeah.
what you can do is, do you see that window where you see the small PPT of yours?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
On that, when you move, do you see pin to screen?
Yeah, that's right. I can see it.
Yes, sir.
I need
Please
to-
click on pin to screen.
Okay, fine. I got it.
Now you can see it in full screen.
Yeah, I can see it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll resume now from where we left off. So apart from what I said in the previous slide, look at what the NEP is very consciously emphasizing. Education must build character. Education must enable learners to be ethical, rational, compassionate, and caring. And please take these words very seriously because at the back of the minds of the framers behind the NEP is the fact that we have not been doing all of this. Dr. Jerome and Indian Academy may be a little upset with all of this because I know some institutions in Bangalore, like Indian Academy, is doing so much to do all of these things. But if you look at what's happening across the country, and if you look at generally the state of the products that we are producing from higher education systems, my experience tells me that all of us have not been successful in doing all of these things. So therefore, I would draw your attention to the people here. Please look at the first bullet point very carefully. We've been teaching for so many years. Most of you, I'm sure, have rich experience in teaching. But have we been able to do all of this? Have we built character? Have we enabled them to be ethical? Have we enabled them to become rational thinkers, compassionate people, caring people? NEP thinks that we have not been doing this, therefore there's need for a new economic policy. Look at the second point, the gap between the current state of learning outcomes and what is required must be bridged. What is the current state of learning outcomes? You're familiar as me as far as what the NEP is talking about here. If we have to bridge this gap between what ought to be and what currently is, well, we must undertake major reforms. And what kind of reforms required? NEP is telling us we have to bring the highest quality, equity, and integrity into the entire educational system, starting from school and moving up to higher education. At every level, if you begin as early as possible and ensure that this is done every day in our teaching lives, perhaps what the NEP is looking at could be realized. And look at the target. The aim must be for India to have an education system by 2040 that is second to none. And this I think is extremely ambitious. Is it possible for all of us to do it? Kindly reflect on that and let me know. I'd like to know your views also on the subject. Can we become world-class? Can we create a world-class education system by 2040 in the space of 20 years, which gives equitable access to the highest quality education for all learners, irrespective of the social background, irrespective of their economic background? Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Now from here, there's a reference to the teachers. What is our role as teachers in the entire system? Well, it says, the NEP says that the teachers are at the center of fundamental reforms in the education system. The NEP must help re-establish teachers at all levels, whatever level we are teaching. Here, of course, we are all teaching at colleges and universities. It says teachers must be re-established as the most respected and essential members of a society, because in our hands is the ability to shape the next generation of students. We are all conscious of that, of course, but the NEP says that unless this is re-established, perhaps we may lose sight of the important responsibility that lies in our hands. For this, teachers have to be empowered, teachers have to be helped to do their job as effectively as possible. Next, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Krishna,
1 minute, sir.
move to the next.
Pandian has moved to the next slide. 1 minute,
I've got
sir.
the previous slide still before me.
But we are
1
not able
minute,
to
sir.
see.
I know you will see the next slide.
Yeah, 1 minute.
This technology is new to me, Under Zoom, I was able to handle the PPT myself. 2 months of classes I was able to do over Zoom, and I was able to handle the PPT myself.
So we are trying to share it again.
Yeah,
It will
please,
just take
please.
a couple of minutes.
Please.
Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. I hope our audience is understanding.
Yes, sir, they are patiently participating.
Yeah, fine. So I've come to the next part of my presentation. Can I go on? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I hope you can see the slide in full screen.
Yeah, I can see it on the full screen. Thank you, Sushma. So
Okay,
I'm
sir.
continuing now. It's also important for us to look at the fundamental principles that the NEP 2020 rests upon. It is a fairly long list. In fact, I want to summarize it into just a few, but then I thought, let's look at each of the principles very carefully. Of course, I'd strongly advise each one of you sitting here to get a copy of this new document. NEP 2020, the final document. It's not a very big document. It's available on the net. You can, print it out and take a printout yourselves. You can store it on your systems and read it. It's very important to do this because we should be conscious of what actually is in the minds of our higher education pundits who are involved in preparing the NEP 2020. Look at the first principle: recognizing, identifying, and fostering the unique capabilities of each student. Every student has unique capabilities, and we ought to recognize, identify, and foster such capabilities. How is it to be done? Sensitize teachers, sensitize parents to promote each student's holistic development, both academic as well as non-academic. The second principle speaks of flexibility, and we'll come back to this later. In the learning trajectories and programs, we've got to ensure a large degree of flexibility, much more than what we are doing now, so that they can choose themselves. Students can choose their own paths in life based upon their talents, based on interests. And linked to the second fundamental principle is the fact that we as parents ought not to force or push courses down the throats of our students. They should be in a position to decide their own paths themselves. Next slide, please. Third principle number 3. The third principle says, and this is again important point, I'll come back to this. This is one of my major areas of focus today. No hard separations between arts and the sciences, between curricular, extracurricular, between vocational, academic, and this is very important. No hard separation. Okay, because this kind of separation which we've been doing all this while has established harmful hierarchies has created silos between different areas of learning, and therefore this policy document is very clear that this compartmentalization that we've been doing so far between various disciplines, that ought to go, between curricular, extracurricular, that ought to go, between academic, non-academic, that ought to go. And I draw your attention specifically to fundamental principle number 3. Well, the term that they use in the document is a whole chapter titled Multidisciplinary Education. The fourth point is explaining this briefly. Multidisciplinarity and a holistic education across all these disciplines. If one's mind is already, if we already have mindsets, the arts mindset, humanities mindset, or the physical sciences mindset, or the natural sciences mindset, and so on, I think number 4 is telling us we've got to overcome all of this, because now they're talking of a multidisciplinary world where knowledge is, at the end of the day, there's a unified knowledge system out there. There's integrity of all knowledge, and this we should accept, and we should be able to impart this kind of education to our students starting from school level itself. Principle number 5, please. Next slide. Number 5. Okay, emphasis on conceptual understanding rather than rote learning, and I'm sure will agree with me that in our schools, what we're doing to our students is encouraging rote learning, learning for exams. That should go away. We should emphasize conceptual understanding. We should teach our students to be creative, engage in critical thinking, to do logical decision making, innovation, and so on. Number 7, ethics, human and constitutional values, and look at the long list of values that our students should be able, that we should be able to inculcate in our students: empathy, respect for others, cleanliness, courtesy, democratic spirit, spirit of service.
Yes, Professor, you can proceed.
Voice is not coming.
Jeevan sir, can you hear us?
He has left the meeting. You had to call him back. I'll call.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've come to, I'm continuing. There'll be some, interruptions like this. I hope you'll bear with me. We have to go back to, could you bring me to the 10th principle?
Yes, sir, we'll do that.
I think principle number 10. No, sorry, stop here, 8, 9, 10. Life skills to be taught to our students: communication, cooperation, teamwork, resilience. Again, very important. I don't think we are doing this. NEP says things we're not doing this. Focus on regular formative assessment for learning rather than the summative assessment that we're doing today, thanks to the coaching culture. Extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, removing language barriers. Now, these are important principles. Move on, please, to number 11. I'm running through each of them. Please go through them very carefully. If you get your own copy, you can do that. But I thought each one of them is important, and therefore I've listed all the 20 fundamental principles that lie at the root of the NEP 2020. Can we move to the 11th one, please? Okay, respect for diversity, respect for the local context in all curriculum, pedagogy, and policy. And here is an important point that the 11th fundamental principle says, and all of you are familiar with this, I'm sure. Education is in the concurrent list of the Indian Constitution, and the NEP respects this fact, and therefore they're talking about respect for diversity and respect for local context, local content, full equity and inclusion, point number 12, point number 3, point number 13, teachers and faculty at the heart of the learning process. So starting from recruitment, starting to their progression and service conditions and so on. Fundamental principle number 13 says teachers ought to be taken care of properly. Next, please, number 14. A light but tight regulatory framework. This is a whole section in the NEP is related to this. I won't go into too many details here. Number 15, outstanding research from higher education institutions. Number 16, continuous review of the kind of research that is being done by experts. Next, please. 17, rootedness and pride in India. As I kept telling you, this keeps recurring frequently in different chapters in the document. That we ought not to forget the fact that we had a rich, diverse, ancient culture, and we've got to be able to replicate that when we come to the present day. The present day. 18, education as a public service. We ought not to lose sight of this particular fact. It requires substantial investment, and it requires also participation of other stakeholders. So it doesn't say, point 20 makes it very clear that the realm of education is not to be handled only by the government. You've got to involve philanthropic, private, and community participants also in this entire exercise. So that's about the principle, 20 of them, which are very important, and I'd like you to go through them very carefully. I now look at the higher education scenario from the next slide onwards. I'm becoming very carefully looking at just the section in the NEP which is looking at higher education. The chapter is titled Quality Universities and Colleges, and I've underlined this here. And beneath that title says that higher education system requires a new vision. higher education system in India requires not just a new vision, it requires a forward-looking vision. Okay, now that's the vision for the future. Next slide, please. But then this document begins by identifying problems. And here are 4 or 5 current problems, and this is where I'd like you to, in case you haven't put your thinking caps on already, please put on, my request to the audience, please put on your thinking caps in case you haven't put them on already. Because this is where I will listen to and relook at the PPT very carefully, listen to me very carefully, and then raise questions, because this is where the NEP is going to make a huge difference to the realm of higher education. Are we familiar with these current problems, 4 or 5? I'm sure we are, but let's repeat them, because this is the starting point behind the NEP saying this is where reform has to begin. I'm sure you'd agree with me that our current higher educational ecosystem is severely fragmented, meaning that we are in silos, we are in compartments, we are offering degrees, BCom only for commerce graduates, BA only for arts graduates, and from then on MA, MCom, MBA, MCA, and so on. Now this is highly fragmented, and therefore they're saying this is problem number 1. Problem number 2, through this fragmentation, we have not been able to give emphasis on the development of cognitive skills and learning outcomes of our students. This rigid separation of disciplines, which begins quite early specialization, we have put our students into very narrow streams, into very narrow areas of study. And 4 speaks about how many of our students from these backgrounds, socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, SEDG groups, this term is used frequently in the report, SEDG, socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, SEDG. What kind of access do these students have? And the current system has not been able to give them adequate access, bring them inclusion, equity has been spoken about, but we've not been able to succeed in that. And the current problem of number 5 says, as far as teachers are concerned, as far as institutions are concerned, a very limited autonomy. Of course, Indian Academy Degree College is an autonomous institution, so you may be happy, proud of the autonomy that you have got, both from the UGC as well as from the university under which you come. But still, notwithstanding that autonomy and the bracket that you use, autonomous status, there is still so much of restriction, so many guidelines that one is expected to follow. So both in teachers and institutions, there is limited autonomy. That's problem number 5. There are a few more problems. Number 6, please. Next one. There are 10 problems that they identify. Number 6, inadequate mechanism for merit-based career management and progression. Faculty, many of you in the faculty may be feeling, I'm meritorious, but then the system is not acknowledging my merit and giving me the promotion that I deserve. UGC may be responsible for that. State government may be responsible for that. Not being conscious of the kind of progression that we expect within the system. 7 speaks of research. And I'm sure in colleges, particularly universities, we have the time to do research, but in colleges, whenever we come visiting, as a LIC member, I've come to your Indian Academy Degree College. As an NAC member, I've gone across the country. And in colleges, when you ask the question, what research you're doing, most of them say, sir, where is the time to do research? Morning to evening, I'm, going from one classroom to the other. Where is the time for me to do research? But then this is a problem according to the NEP. We have not been able to give adequate emphasis to research in colleges. And whatever research we are doing, some of us may apply for funds, and I'm sure many of you in the audience have applied to the UGC for grants to do research. But then is this research, where would the research stand if it's going to be peer reviewed? And across disciplines, in terms of governance and leadership, suboptimal governance leadership, regulatory system ineffective. I'm sure you're conscious of the fact that the entire UGC is going to go, and in the place of UGC, we're going to have a completely new institution. That is a consequence of problem number 9. And then problem number 10, the last problem in the list, speaks of large affiliating universities. Too many of them, Indian Academy, when I came to your college quite a few times, we were proud of the fact that Indian Academy is affiliated to Bangalore University. But then all of you know, Dr. Jerome would know this better than the others. During the time of Dr. Timegowda, and I was his special officer then, Vice Chancellor, well, we saw this trifurcation happening, and now Indian Academy is no longer with BU. If you can't have large affiliating universities, you must reduce their numbers. So trifurcation, has it helped or not? I'm not very sure. We can discuss this at some other time. But then the NEP says this whole concept of affiliating universities has got to go because it has resulted in low standards of undergraduate education. Okay, now let me move on. These are 10 problems that you find in the document itself. We need to reflect on these problems, and we also need to look at what is the solution to these problems. Next slide, please. I'll spend a little time on policy vision relating to these problems specifically, the 10 problems that we just went through, the 10 current problems. The document says this is our policy vision for higher education. And here again, I'd like you to read each of these 5 elements very carefully. We ought to move towards a higher education system consisting of large multidisciplinary universities and colleges. Point number 1. Point number 2, we've got to move towards a more multidisciplinary undergrad education. And those of you, if you're from undergrad colleges like Indian Academy Degree College, this second vision is exceedingly important. I'll be going into what the NEP has in mind in a little while. Regarding the career progression of teachers and so on, teaching research service is all linked together. Number 4 speaks of the establishment of an NRF. And number 5 says, research in universities and colleges ought to be actively seeded, and therefore in terms of resources, the 5th dimension speaks of adequate funding for doing this kind of research. Next, please. Now I'll come to the recommendations. I'll quickly run through the recommendations. Again, here, please look at each of the bullet points very carefully. I've compressed much more complicated language that the document is actually using here. And let me quickly run through this once again. We have to move to large universities and HEI clusters, multidisciplinary universities and clusters. This is the highest recommendation of this policy document regarding structure of higher education. This point, I think we must look at very carefully, because it's going to impact especially the younger teachers in the audience. Even while you're teaching and while you're progressing, this new system is going to come into place, and we've got to get used to teaching in multidisciplinary higher education institution clusters. The reference is to, as earlier the document spoke about, we had such universities earlier. Takshashila, Nalanda, Vallabhi, Vikramshila are just 4 examples of the kind of multidisciplinary universities we had in the ancient times. And this document tells us that these were hugely successful Indian universities in the ancient period. They were very successful. They engaged in large multidisciplinary research. They were also doing teaching simultaneously, and they were able to produce well-rounded, innovative individuals. Now, this is repeated again and again in this NEP, and they want all of us associated with higher education to be conscious of this. All our institutions, Indian Academy, should be able to look at established Takshashila, Nalanda, Vallabhi, Vikramshila, and other institutions as the benchmarks. What was it that they were doing? How did they achieve this? How can we aspire to replicating the kind of model that these ancient Indian universities were doing earlier in the ancient period? Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so this vision says we've got to conceptually understand what exactly is a HEI, higher education institute. It could be a university, it could be a college, and the explanation is given very carefully here. Second point, a university will mean a multidisciplinary institution of higher learning, definitely of a university. There's a threefold hierarchy that they're speaking about. The third point speaks of research-intensive universities at the top of the hierarchy. Okay, next slide, please. This may not really interest college teachers, therefore I'm not going into too many details here. Next slide, please. Okay, the second level is a 3-tier system that the NEP is speaking about. Apart from research-intensive universities, teaching-intensive universities. And number 3, this is where Indian Academy faculty and the faculty of the other colleges which come under your Paramarsh scheme of the UGC. Third is very important. Colleges will be labeled autonomous degree granting colleges. The acronym that they use is AC. So college faculty here may want to focus on the third level in the hierarchy that the NEP wishes to create. So the AC, autonomous colleges, will refer to large multidisciplinary institutional higher learning that grants degrees. You'll be allowed to grant your own degrees. You'll be focused, of course, on undergrad teaching, but you will be called a degree granting college once the implementation of the NEP takes place. And now, does this mean you'll be slotted? Now, please listen carefully. Those of you who belong to the colleges, does this mean that if you are now, slotted as an AC, an autonomous degree granting college, does it mean that you have to be stuck in this slot itself? No, sir. The NEP says you may be at the current juncture in this particular position, but every college can aspire to climbing up this rung. The second rung you can aspire, given your fulfillment of certain conditions. So from an AC, you can become a teaching intensive university. And the transition, they say, will not be very difficult to make. And after so many years of being a teaching intensive university, you may want to aspire for something better. And then that's on top of the hierarchy, which is called a research intensive university. So the threefold hierarchy, and this document makes it very clear. Please move to the next slide. That you can, from an AC, graduate to the next level. So this point makes it very clear. These three broad types of institutions are not rigid, not exclusionary. They are along a continuum, and you can move from one to the other. The scope for evolution. I've lost my. Okay, I'll come back to that. Okay, I've come back to that. Please move on to the next one. By 2040, all HEI shall aim to become multidisciplinary. 2040, but then that's long term. It says that by 2030, all HEIs will firstly plan to become multidisciplinary by 2030. So in 10 years, all colleges will have to put their systems into place, and they say near every district by 2030 at least there will be one large multidisciplinary HEI. It also speaks of the gross enrollment ratio, which includes vocational education. Currently it's about 26 point something. This should become at 2035 50%. GR India is one of the lowest in the world. They're saying this should brought up to 50% 2035. This should be done steadily. Please take a look at the last one very carefully. Single stream HEIs will be phased out over a period of time. Of course, Indian Academy need not worry because you're not a single stream HEI, but if you were to be a law college, my last talk on NEP was at KLE Law College. So that specifically I told them law colleges will not be called law colleges anymore because that's a single stream HEI. Law colleges, agriculture universities, medical colleges and universities, and so on, all of them which are now single stream, offering single stream kind of education, will be phased out over a period of time, and all of them will have to become multidisciplinary. Okay, please move to the next one. It also speaks about scope for ODL programs. Please move to the next slide. Pandian. Okay, ODL. Institutions can also, your colleges, if you're not doing or running ODL, open distance learning online programs, well, once you get the permission to do so, you can do this so that the GR will improve. Those who cannot come for regular classes, regular courses, they can learn from home. And this is what the term lifelong learning means in the UN SDG number 4. Okay, so depending on the kind of courses that you're offering, it could be a diploma, it could be a degree, it could be a certificate course, and 1 year it could be a certificate, 2 years diploma, 3 years you can give them a degree, 4 years you can give them postgrad degree. All these things are mentioned in the document. We can come back to this a little later. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, briefly about pedagogy before I go on to the most important aspect, my concerns. As far as pedagogy and range of discipline is concerned, I'm repeating what I said earlier in the vision document. You would have listened to this, but I've elaborated that here. Departments, now this is important even for Indian academy and the other colleges to be conscious of. If the pedagogy is to increase emphasis on communication, discussion, debate, research, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary thinking, look at the new departments which will have to be established. In case colleges have not established these departments, the NEP 2020 says colleges must be ready to establish departments in languages, literature, music, philosophy, Indology, art, dance, theatre, education, mathematics. Now arts colleges will have to open departments in the science subjects listed here. Science colleges, commerce colleges, exclusive single discipline colleges will have to ensure that they establish departments in these areas, because the idea is the focus is on multidisciplinary education. Next slide onwards, look at the other range of concerns that this education should incorporate, apart from formal, apart from what you're doing in the classroom, apart from what is being done through these courses. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It's going to be, curricula would be flexible, curricula would be innovative, there would be more and more credit-based courses in the projects. Look at the other points mentioned here: community engagement, community service, environmental education that already we are doing, value-based education we already are doing. In addition to that, something much more. And if currently what we're teaching in environmental education does not include all of this, well, this ought to be brought in. So the second slide speaks of the other dimensions of environmental education, which has to be brought into the curriculum, irrespective of the course that you're actually studying. So look at the wide range that is speaking about here. Next slide, please. Value-based education, there's a reference to what actually is supposed to include humanistic values, ethical values, constitutional values, universal human values. And what are these values? They have been explained here: truth, righteous conduct, peace, love, non-violence, scientific temper, citizen. All of these are mentioned in the document. Lessons in community service, in imparting community service. All of this is to be a part of the holistic multidisciplinary education that the NEP is speaking about. Next, please. Next. Okay, now if all of this, if in case any of you thought, now all of this is meant to produce good Indian citizens, please change your minds, because this document says we don't want to produce only good Indian citizens, we want to also produce simultaneously good global citizens. So there's an acronym that is used in the document called GCED. It stands for Global Citizen Education, and they say that only if this is done will our students be able to understand the implications of global issues and be in a position to contribute to, or be in a position to establish or promote more peaceful, more tolerant, inclusive, secure, and sustainable societies. Okay, let's move on, please. Next. This document also speaks of research. Next slide, please. Very briefly, I'll just run through research. NEP 2020 talks of research. It may not be immediately relevant to Indian academy or to the other colleges, because we are more worried about our course content, curriculum, and so on. Research teaching at the moment. Research may not be very important, but just take a glance at the fact that it says research should also be emphasized. Next slide, please. The establishment of a new organization. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The establishment of a new organization called NRF, a National Research Foundation, which would be able to competitively fund research in all disciplines. So with the UGC, right now we're familiar with the University Grants Commission. And why do we take UGC very seriously? Mainly because they have so much of money with them. Basically, as the term itself indicates, it's a grant-giving institution. So UGC gives us grants and we do what we're supposed to do. Now that the grant giving thing is taken away from the UGC, UGC will not be called UGC anymore. And for research particularly, there's a new body called NRF, which will be funding research, quality academic research. Next slide, please. We can come back to this in case you're interested. Please go on to the next slide, please. These are some functions of the NRF. I won't be talking about this here. Okay, finally I come to, I may need some time, 10 minutes or so to reflect on my critical concerns. So if I have done, if I've taken a little too long in telling you what the NEP was all about, I thought that was important because we are reacting, we are engaging in dialogues and debates without actually looking at the document. And therefore, I thought, since quite a few of the people I have interacted with have said, no, they've not seen the document, read the document carefully, I thought it's important that we do that. And I've tried so far to tell you what is the essence of the document, what is the focus, what is the vision, what are the principles it's based on, and what actually they're trying to do to institutions like HEIs, higher educational institutions. This is my first area of concern. I think is policy document. I mean, I've seen a range of policy documents in different areas. Okay, you can have policy documents in agriculture, industry, cottage industry, that, this, and so on and so forth. But then a document that speaks of radical restructuring right from school to secondary to primary to secondary to higher education and beyond. I think the kind of changes they're talking about makes it, according to me, an extremely ambitious document. There's no harm in aiming for the stars. There's no harm in being very ambitious. And we tell our students also this frequently. No harm if you wish to be ambitious. But then, those are goals. To achieve lofty goals, you must also have a practicable, what shall I say, roadmap to be able to realize those goals. We have the ambition here, we have the document here, we have the vision here. I think the third point I'm saying, the challenge lies in its implementation. And my experience as a teacher of political science, public policy tells me you can have grandiose policy documents, but to me, most of these grandiose policy documents fall short when it comes to implementation. My worry is a hugely ambitious policy document like the NEP 2020, in its implementation, may fall radically short of the vision that they've established. This is one of my concerns. Next slide, please. What is my second concern? Secondly, I'm saying that this document does not actually address some of the critical challenges in education. There's a whole list of problems. I refer those problems to you. These are problems they're talking about. I won't repeat those problems. But to me, there are problems which are as important, as critical than the problems that they have, or as critical as the problem that they have identified. And very briefly, this is what I'm talking about. One, you're familiar with this question, and when we visit your colleges and ask you, NAC comes and university teams come, we ask for dropouts. And teachers would be conscious of the fact that quite a few, look at the enrollment, look at the intake is 30, we may have 30 students initially at the start of the course, but then over a period of time, you're familiar with the phenomenon of dropouts. I'm not sure what the dropout rate of Indian Academy is, or the other colleges part of the Paramarsh are. This is an important question. My statistics tell me, my visits to colleges tell me, the dropout ratio in many places is quite large, and therefore this is a problem. So where is the NEP looking at the phenomenon of increasing dropouts of students who enroll, are not able to sustain their continue their education, and they drop out? Point number two, civic values are facing vicious threats. If you were to say that this will be part of this education, let's leave this out. But I'm drawing your attention to the current socio-political environment, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may agree, some of you may disagree with me. There's no problem. Let's discuss this. Do you or do you not agree with me that the current socio-political environment in the entire country is promoting these kinds of values? Obscurantism, deepening social divisions, encouraging backlash against the already marginalized sections. Are we not seeing this happening on a day-to-day basis? Where is the NEP talking about these current contemporary challenges? I have a problem with the NEP here, point number two. Point number three, my critical concern number three, next slide, please. Can I have the next slide?
So third slide is on. Jeevan sir, are you with us? Participants, kindly stay with us while our resource person will rejoin. Jeevan sir, you have to unmute the microphone.
Sorry, each time it goes off to something else, it happens. Okay, so this is the third point I was on. Sorry for the interruptions, but then this is technology at work. It's simply too packed, simply too eclectic. And look at, I mean, a young student who just come out of college, +2, okay, and you're joining Indian Academy. Indian Academy is offering you this multidisciplinary package, okay, a bewildering array of academic plus vocational choices. How many of, please tell me, teachers who are here, please tell me how many of our students would be able to say, okay, this is my, combination. I will choose nuclear physics if you're offering that. I will choose rural sociology. I will choose something in political science, political thought. I will choose arts and other vocational courses and so on. Now, this kind of a combination that they want students to take up right at the very beginning. Will our students be able to do this on their own? Maybe parents will push them into something, but then again, the unidisciplinary, the single stream institutions are no longer going to be there. Everything is going to be brought into this. What kind of choices? If they're given a package, a menu of some 25, 30, combinations that out of which you have to choose 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 out of 30, 40, or 50, would our students at that age in their lives be able to make what we are describing as informed choices? I think it's too packed. I mean, maybe Takshashila and maybe the ancient period they were able to do this, but I'm not very sure whether the average student who comes into our educational portals would be able to say, okay, this is my choice, this is my list of 10 that I want to do, and I'm very clear why I want to choose this 10, and that 10 must be across a range of disciplines. All 10 cannot be only in the liberal arts, all 10 cannot be only in commerce, all 10 cannot only be in law. They have to be across disciplines, and you must have a minimum of courses that you do in each of these areas. Next, please, number 4. Number 4. How do you integrate arts and sciences? I'm sure this is something that we already are thinking about. It's easy to talk about this. Arts and science will be integrated, will produce, holistic people and so on and so forth. How will you relay the integration of the arts and science and this kind of knowledge to the students in a comprehensive fashion? And this is the third example I'm giving frequently here and there. How will you demand that an undergraduate student combine, for example, quantum physics with rural sociology or rural development, political science with organic chemistry? Now, I think the kind of innovation that he's talking about may not be, I mean, we may be able to offer that, but will a student who opts for this be able to, imbibe the kind of knowledge we are delivering, we're trying to give? I think this kind of integration is going to be very difficult. Of course, I think it was Hema is here. You're talking about C.P. Snow, isn't it? C.P. Snow and one of his famous books on the subject. We can discuss this a little later. Concern number 5, please. I have 10 concerns. We have to rush through this and give time for questions. Number 5, and here again, teachers already here, please tell me, don't we already have multidisciplinarity in what we're doing now? When I was special officer to Dr. Thimme Gowda when he was Vice Chancellor of Bangalore University, that was the time when Dr. Thimme Gowda Bangalore University brought in the CBSE scheme into the various colleges, and the Indian Academy, I know, also went in for the CBSE system, where we are told that you've got to bring in multidisciplinarity, you've got to break those silos and so on. So we introduced the concept of open electives. That we already are doing. We are telling art students, you've got to take one open elective in another non-arts kind of a course and so on. I'm not sure how Indian Academy is doing this. I'm not very sure how successful it is, but open electives are currently being offered. And during discussion time, I'd like you to tell me, teachers, faculty of Indian Academy particularly, how is this open elective system under the open elective course under the CBSE system? How is it actually working? Things are happening. currently, but how well they're working, I'm not very sure. Next concern, please, number 6. What is my 6th concern? Next slide, please.
So 6th point is on the projection. ये हो जाए.
Professor Jeevan Kumar, would you kindly rejoin?
So there seems to be a disconnect. I guess he'll rejoin.
I put on my mic. Can I have the slide once again, please? I'm sorry. I'm sorry these things are happening.
It's fine, sir.
I'm sorry.
We are connected still.
I think we are taxing the patience of our audience here. Okay, point number 6 again may not be of much relevance to Indian academy. This would be of more concern to single stream HEIs, you know, and I briefly discussed this earlier, so we'll move on. It's not of concern to HEIs. I don't think we have single stream HEI teachers in our group here today. Let's move to 7th one, please. I have 10 concerns. I want to finish it quickly so we can throw open this program for questions. Okay, number 7, undergrad research project. Tell me again, the teachers of Indian Academy and other colleges who are here, research is taken up very seriously. There's a whole new body engaged funding research and so on. How easy is it for teachers at the UG level to undertake the kind of research that that this program speaks about? How easy is it for us to do research? This focus here is of course on students who are ready to do research. So let's leave out teachers for the timing. Let's look at students. Now 3 years, a student has completed an undergraduate course, and he has shown interest in doing research. So this whole scheme is saying that by the time a student comes to the completes his 3 years, if he or she is research oriented, well, 1 year of research, serious research, sustained research, will lead them to doctoral degrees. Okay, this is in the 4 years. In a 4-year undergrad study. So 4th year you teach them all about research, and then they're ready to be registered for a PhD program. The question that I'm raising here is 3 years or 4 years. In 4 years of undergrad study, would our students have the maturity to be able to embark on quote unquote original research? In Indian academy, of course, you may point out to exceptions, but I'm saying how many of our students would be able to undertake UG research projects leading to postgraduate degrees? What kind of research? Again, as we know, UGC is very conscious of plagiarism, very conscious of non-ethical research and so on. In the name of promoting research, will we be going back to a scenario that the UGC and other institutions have been talking about? 8th, please, number 8. My concern number 8 speaks of the real challenges. I may have briefly referred to this earlier, but this is where I'm saying the real challenges in our education are the challenges of access, the challenge of equity, and the challenge of social justice. These terms you find referred to in the NEP. I have no problem. I'm not saying they're not referring to it. You find these words in the NEP. But but the solution to this problem is, the NEP says, if we have a focused drive to establish HEIs in backward districts of India, if we make a concerted effort to establish HEIs in remote districts of India, we would be able to resolve these 3 problems of access, equity, and social justice. My considered point here is that uneven regional development is not responsible for the lack of access, equity, social justice. The real reasons behind lack of these important elements in higher education, according to me, are social divisions. What kind of socials? Based on caste, based on gender, based on class, based on disability, based on religious identity. Now, each of these I could deliver a whole lecture on each of these, but I have underlined social divisions, and I leave this with you. Would you or would you not agree with me that these, unless these are addressed, you will not be able to say I have the answer to access, lack of access, equity, and lack of social justice in higher education. Let's move on to the ninth one, please. Ninth concern of mine. Okay, I'm linking up the eighth with the ninth here. I'm saying that these social divisions have a major impact on educational needs, on educational prospects. This link is not established well enough by the NEP, either in the vision or in the principles or in how they propose to implement this. I've given a few examples here. The NEP does not address challenges in implementing the reservation policy on admissions and appointments. Again, when we visit your colleges, from Bangalore University, when we come to Indian Academy, any other college, we ask a question, how are you implementing the reservation policy? Please give us the data as far as implementation of reservation policy is concerned, as far as the students are concerned, as far as your teachers are concerned. And in established private institutions, we have found a severe shortfall for various reasons. I mean, I've gone to a college like National College. I've interacted with Dr. H. Narasimhaya, who told me that we can't produce SC/ST students in National College because they don't come here. They go to other colleges. They don't come here. Or even if they come to, I remember HN's words very clearly. Even if SC/ST student comes to National College, they don't reveal their identity. They don't produce their caste certificates, and therefore we can't show them as belonging to reserve category. There are problems. I'm not saying there are no problems, but this is a real challenge, which I think we've got to address. Why is it that there's a severe shortfall as far as filling in the constitutionally mandated reservation quota, both in students as well as in teaching community, in established education institutions? Okay, the NEP also does not speak about discriminatory situations, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with the fact that in national institutions, higher education institutions at national level, there are huge complaints of discrimination against marginalized students. University of Hyderabad, AIMS in Delhi, other national level institutions. There are situations which neither the teaching nor the administration are simply able to address, simply able to face. Providing institutional justice either for students or for teachers belonging to these sections. Do we have such systems? Where are institutions acknowledging the accommodation needs of students with disabilities? Every time we hear about wheelchair access, but is that the only kind of disability that our students are facing? So many of them have multiple or other kinds of disabilities. Are we looking at that? I don't find the NEP speaking about this. The ninth one, and finally the 10th and the last of my concerns here. And with that, I'm going to close. Looking at research, this NRF they're talking about is to be established, is to be based in New Delhi. And I think, as the name itself indicates, this is going to be a top-down model of administering research. Somewhere they speak about local, regional emphasis on research and so on and so forth. But if you have a national level body that is going to invite your proposals, going to look at your proposals and so on. So if you are looking at something very unique to your state, your region, your district, your community or your village, and say, I want to do research on this, which to the NRF may appear to be very insignificant, I don't think they're going to encourage this. I don't think they're going to fund that kind of research. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I took a very long, so much of your time, but then the mandate given to me was also quite large. Dr. Jerome was very generous to me by saying that he'll give me so much of time. Of course, the time was inclusive of discussion. I'm not very sure how much time we have for discussion now, but then I've tried to do what I think some of you may not have done, gone into the NEP in depth. I've tried to do that. And in the last 10-15 minutes, I placed before you what my concerns are. I'm through now. I don't think I have anything else to share with you. But I now wish to ask Dr. Jerome how much time for discussion, how many questions have already come in the chat box. And Rashmi, I think, is going to prioritize and throw the questions at me. So I'm now ready to go through the presentation. Sorry once again for taking so much of time, but let's have at least some discussion on the issues that have been raised so far. Thank you very much, Dr. Jerome, and thank you, audience, also for putting starting up with a long presentation.
Thank you, Professor. Now, Professor Suchi will take over question answer sessions.
Yes, sir. Dr. Jeevan, first of all, I would like to keep you informed. A lot of participants are appreciative of your intellectual review and interpretation of the policy.
Okay.
Can we proceed with the question answers?
Yeah, we can proceed. There were some questions asking for the PPT. It's now in your hands. Please feel free to share the PPT with whoever wants to have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. We will certainly do that.
Yeah.
To begin with, Ms. Shabana Farheen, the question.
Yeah.
NEP focuses on stay in India concept and allowing foreign universities. Will it create the huge gap again between the haves and economically weaker section?
Okay. How do I answer individually, is it?
Yes, sir.
Shabana, no, I don't think I would agree in your understanding of the NEP. It was a reference to our grandiose Indian, culture, tradition, the kind of university that we had and so on, produce good quality Indian citizens. All that is there, but nowhere does the NEP says that you have to stay in India. It doesn't say that all this education is meant for us to remain in the country. No, sir, it does not do that. As far as entry of foreign universities is concerned, NEP is open to the idea of allowing foreign universities to come. Of course, there will be a lot of restrictions. All of them cannot come in. Small-time universities wanting to establish and compete with established institutional Indian academy, that they will allow. I believe I read somewhere that only those foreign universities in the top 100 category internationally, if they want to establish their networks in India, they would be allowed to do so. So please don't think that the whole thing is so nationalistic that it doesn't want our students to go out, that doesn't want other institutes to come in. No, sir. No, Shabana, that's not the case. The whole system is geared towards, both two-way kind of interaction. Our students, in fact, if there's time, we could discuss this. If not today, some other day. The whole idea is to produce, what's the term? Well-rounded citizens, well-skilled citizens who can get into any institution, any kind of employment anywhere in the world. That we are not able to do so far. Only the very elite have been able to get this kind of education. So if this is done down the line, any good student was able to grasp the vision of the document and gets a kind of a degree, multi-skilled, multiple competencies, well-rounded people, such students will be able to get into any employment in any part of the world. Next question, please.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Mr. Nicholas.
Yeah.
Sir, in case of affiliated colleges, how do we offer open electives? Could you share your insights on that?
You are currently doing it. Nicholas, where do you teach? Can I know where Nicholas teaches?
He is with an affiliated college, sir.
Okay, affiliate colleges also under, you have the CBSE system currently in place, isn't it, Nicholas?
CBCS system, yes.
Yeah, choice-based credit system is already in place. Under CBCS, it's compulsory that you do offer open electives. So that system currently is on. You are offering open electives, but the condition is that it can't be in the same discipline. Like we told students of political science, you can't take any of the social sciences. It's got to be cross-disciplinary, and therefore we invited teachers from the Department of Environmental Science to offer a course as open elective for us. So based upon student choices, we offered open electives in completely different disciplines. That system is currently in place. So Nicholas' question is how is to be offered? Well, the system is currently in place, but the NEP is talking of much more than that. Currently, my point is currently under open electives, we are just offering once during the 3-year course, a six semester course. I think once or twice you can take up open electives. You take up open electives in other courses across disciplines. This NEP is saying that will not do, that limited open elective system simply will not do, because they may or may not grasp the essence of what you're teaching them in just 1 or 2 semesters. Your whole college should become multidisciplinary. The menu that you offer to him at the beginning itself, to him or her, at the beginning itself, should cover a range of disciplines, and a minimum of so many in each of these disciplines would be made compulsory. We'll be able to see what kind of combinations they are able to offer once the NEP is actually implemented. You're all stakeholders. Dr. Jerome will also be involved in how you're going to implement it, what kind of courses you're willing to offer, can offer, and so on. Once it comes into place, there's still time before the implementation plan of action actually happens. We've got to look at what actually happens, Nicholas. As of now, we have started something. I'm saying, some are saying this is good enough, open electives. They are saying it's not good enough. It's still not producing well-rounded citizens exposed to a variety of other disciplinary contexts and content. This should be done. To me, that is going to be a huge challenge. I hope Nicholas would be satisfied with his answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, next, please.
Thank you, sir. One common question among the audience is, from when is this NEP going to be implemented?
Okay, I'm not the person to answer this question, but then they're doing it very democratically. As you know, the draft NEP was opened up for public debate. Dr. M.K. Sridhar, who was in Bangalore University, and soon after I retired, he also retired. He was a member of the draft Kasturi Rangan committee. So after the draft, once the draft NEP was 2019 was put in the public domain, there were events across the country in looking at the draft NEP. But the draft NEP is a huge document, and all of us didn't have time to go into all of that. That draft document, running into several hundred pages, has now been brought into a capsule document, which is very easy to go through. The chapterization may be large, but the content is not so large. Even this document, once it was accepted by the government of India, okay, very recently it was placed before the Prime Minister and the HRD ministry and so on. Right now, the policy document has been accepted. Stage number 1 is over. Stage number 2 is when this policy has to be translated into action. As all of you would be knowing, every policy needs to have an action plan for implementation. In the policy domain or as a policy, a lot of high-sounding things are spoken about. Each of these have to be implemented. For this, we need a detailed action plan. When the government of India is going to come up with this, I'm not very sure. And I can't speak for the government of India. M.K. Sridhar is a friend of mine. You may have seen in the newspapers recently that M.K. Sridhar has now been made a member of the University Grants Commission. So when we congratulated him, we told him, your NEP speaks of doing away with UGC, and you're made a member of UGC. What's happening? Tell us. So he says the UGC is going to be dismantled, and I'm going to be part of the entire process by which it's going to dismantle, and a new institution is going to come in its place. Okay, so they have to establish, first of all, a new institution in place of the UGC. That will take some time. Currently, UGC is in the process of being dismantled. That new institution, along with the HRD ministry, will be in charge of drawing up or drafting an action plan for implementation. And this, again, may happen sooner than later. I think it will, because they are working fairly quickly along these lines. So my guess is the plan of action would be ready in the next 3 months or so. That's my guess. Or even if they take 6 months, the plan of action will be ready. That plan of action, again, I think will not be imposed, thrust down the throats of HEIs. I think once the plan of action is ready, they will invite opinions, invite discussions and so on. And if I know Dr. Sridhar and know some of the others who are there, I think they will again say, okay, now let's get down to the nitty-gritty of implementing it. Indian academy, I perceive one particular problem. A whole lot of new disciplines have to be introduced in addition to courses that you're offering. How you're going to do that, that will be discussed very carefully, I think, with the new members who are going to be part of the new system. Single stream HEIs will be more of a problem, because they're saying agricultural universities cannot offer only agricultural courses, IITs cannot offer only technological courses, medical colleges cannot offer only medical degrees. So they will be in a deeper predicament, but even that will be sorted out. So I think they will have action groups, they will have experts who will be interacting with us and so on. That will take some time, but I'm presuming in the course of the next 6 months, maximum 1 year, things will be in place, because if we look at the targets they've established, all institutions will become multidisciplinary by a particular period. So they've established benchmarks. So keeping that benchmark in mind, I think we need not wait for more than a year for the action plan to be brought into force. So we've got to start thinking already, participating in such events, bringing to the public domain our concerns, because before the action plan is initiated, if colleges like Indian Academy and other colleges can come together and say, okay, these are the immediate concern that we are faced with, or that is worrying us. You can interact with them. Things are happening in a democratic way. Practically every day, as you will know, there are webinars happening on the NEP, and there are huge. Bangalore University is doing it along 4 or 5 days. On the NEP, they've got former vice chancellors, they've got experts, they've got members of the Kasturi Rangan committee, and so on. So things are happening. I think it's important that we read the document. It's important that we take a position on this. It's important that we share our concerns. It's important that we air our concerns so that members, people belonging to people in the establishment, know exactly what kind of problems we are anticipating. Okay, thank you. Next question.
Thank you, sir. There's one question from Facebook, Mr. Vineet George. Have not the premier Indian higher education institutions like IITs, IIMs attained their hallowed stature due to their singular focus on technology, management, and humanities, respectively? Is it wise to dilute their focus and make them multidisciplinary? Should not the premier higher education institutions be spared of this dilution?
Yeah, Vineet, that's a very perceptive question, which has also been bothering me quite a bit, and will be bothering, the CEOs or the heads of these institutions very much ever since this became a public document. I agree with you. First point that you said, these IITs today are world-renowned, IIMs are world-renowned. Some of our medical and agricultural universities are world-renowned, and they've achieved their current status thanks to the fact that they focus their entire attention upon one particular area, and they've been spending a lot of time, energy, attention, and money on producing world-class quality, world-quality students who would be able to fit into employment scenarios anywhere in the world. I agree with you that this has been done. But Vineet, just pause for a while, and this is where I also have something to share with you. Let's take a look at, you brought in IIMs, Indian Institute of Management. Okay, I'll draw your attention to another institution called Institute for Rural Management, IRMA, I think it's called. Have you heard of IRMA, Institute of Rural Management? Now, IRMA was established to promote rural development, rural management in a big way. Currently, I'm working with a rural development university, and some of the people in our, in the expert group did go to IRMA also to find out what actually is happening there. And believe it or not, now the bright young minds who are graduating with MBAs from IRMA are not interested in, believe it or not, interested in rural management of the country. Believe it or not, our MBA graduates from IIMs are not interested in serving the country. I'm making generalizations, of course, but by and large, I'm told that in two ways, the kind of education, the kind of image that they've built up, these institutions, I don't think will, bear deep scrutiny at two levels. One is in terms of where are they actually going to? Are we able to benefit from the investment that has been made, in them by the country? And my limited knowledge tells me, no, sir, they're all looking at foreign. Nothing wrong if you're looking at MNCs, foreign shows. Nothing really wrong. Let them see greener pastures. But was that one of the intentions behind establishing these institutions, the kind of degrees that we are giving? I have a little problem here, because I think your loyalty should be first to the country. If you're doing a rural management course, and rural management in India is in a rural development, agriculture is in a huge mess today. You'll agree with me. I think we need the expertise, their expertise, firstly for the country itself. Point number one. Point number two, what kind of values do you think these people are being imparted? We need, again, listen very carefully. I know from IIM Bangalore that students who were admitted because they could not pay, admitted students who could not pay their fees, okay, seeking bank loans, and the fee structure is huge in IIM, especially IIM A, IIM B. Huge. You can't afford it normally. You have to take a bank loan. I know of so many cases, and this is an insider story, so many cases of students who've taken loans through placements, got fancy jobs with fancy salaries, who have refused to repay the loans that they've taken from our banks. Believe it or not. Yeah, these are the values we're inculcating in our bright MBA students. They make excellent, fodder for multinational companies. Some of them come to head MNCs. But if you haven't had the grace, haven't had the honesty and integrity to settle your loan that you've taken, you run away somewhere else and refuse to settle the loans, I think we are producing not the kind of people that we require, but other people. So brand name, brand image, many of these have good name across country, but in terms of quality of output, I have a problem here. Vineet, your studies, we should do studies on this also. Your perceptions may be different, but I have a problem here. So dilution, perhaps yes, converting these into multidisciplinary institutions may be termed dilution, but at the end of the day, you're producing an honest citizen. You're producing a good citizen. You're producing a citizen who knows what the proper country needs and says, okay, I'm going to invest whatever energy I have left in the course of my, I'm going to invest my energy subsequently into doing something for my country. I would think that is what I would expect from an MBA student or a student from any of these reputed, hallowed institutions. Okay, next question, please.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Sri Kavya.
Yeah.
What skills can future teachers should be prepared with for this new policy?
Okay, that's again a good question. Please don't get the impression that all of us have to become multidisciplinary. That is not expected from us. The problem is more Dr. Jerome's here. He will have to ensure now a student says that I want to do quantum physics, for example, and Indian Academy does not have a physics department or does not have a person who can specialize in quantum physics or organic or inorganic chemistry. I'm sure you do, but I'm just giving an example, or agricultural economics or even something to do with medicine. Well, it becomes the job of the management and the principal to be able to ensure that those courses are handled by experts in those areas. Okay, we can continue to be specialized in whatever we are doing. I'm not sure what Sri Kavya is teaching. Maybe it's whatever Sri Kavya is, maybe sociology, maybe political science, whatever. You continue to do what you're doing. There's no problem here. But we should be conscious of the fact that at the end of the day, we are teaching not just for teaching's sake. We need to reinvent ourselves. We need to be conscious of the fact that at the end of the day, a student enjoys his class. The document says this, and at the end of every class, you ask the students, how did you find my class? Would they be honest and tell you we found it boring, or we found you rushing through the syllabus, or we didn't find you involved in what you were doing? Or would every student say, Madam, sir, I found your class enjoyable? That's a different, very limited person, end of every day. Did the student find my class enjoyable? Point number, very elementary level, but on a larger perspective, when they graduate, when they're looking forward to graduation and you're holding a graduation day ceremony, at that point of time, would I as a teacher in wherever I'm teaching, say very proudly, I think I produced good citizens, well-rounded citizens, and all the values that the document speaks about. I think I've done my best to inculcate those values. That is more important. So those of us who are in the teaching profession, I think it's important for us not simply to be worried about completion of the syllabus, but to become even better teachers in terms of molding personalities, molding values, and making them good citizens, both of India and of the world. That's my answer to Sri Kavya. Thank you for a good question, Sri Kavya. Do you have time for others? Dr. Jerome, are we running short of time?
Thank you, sir, for your patience in answering our questions. We have one last question to take.
Okay.
From Mr. Jafar Mohammed.
Okay.
Is it not NEP a token effort or just a tinkering of the system, rather sweeping of changes to set right the education system in our country?
No, Jafar, I don't agree. It is just tinkering, or I wouldn't use the word tinkering, because I think it's radical what they're trying to do. They want to transform the whole NEP wishes, transform the whole arena of education, starting from school, primary, secondary, higher education. The whole scenario is to be changed, radically changed. So don't get misled by the size of NEP 2020. As a document is very brief, but if you read it very carefully, and then I advise Dr. Jerome to pass on my PPT to Jafar Mohammed also. If you look at what he's trying to do, these are huge changes. Just look at one area I focus upon: multidisciplinary education. Leave out everything else. This kind of scenario is unheard of in our country. All along since independence, we have been, used to a particular system of education where we believe that the disciplinary boundary should be respected. If I wish to do an MA in political science, that discipline is important for me. An MSc in physics or an MCom, master's degree in commerce or business administration. Now this kind of focus on one particular area is something that this document is saying should go. So in the course of the next 6 months to 1 year, we are going to hear more and more about multidisciplinarity, and this is where I think it's making a huge difference to what we are currently in. My concerns are related to this. So I wouldn't agree that they're just looking at the surface, just looking at tinkering. I think they're onto something very big, and we've got to understand, appreciate the magnitude of what they're trying to do. And if we are stakeholders, I think Jafar Mohammed probably is a teacher somewhere. If you're a teacher, I think we have to look very carefully at what kind of difference is going to make to the quality of my classroom, what kind of expectations are there upon me, and at the end of the day, whether a student who undergoes a course as per this new, as per NEP 2020, would qualify to possess those qualifications that the NEP says every student will definitely come to acquire. Will he or will he not? I think that is the big question before us.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
I guess that's the end of the question and answer session.
Okay.
Your insights on the importance of multidisciplinary learning to equip a skilled workforce for the future is thought-provoking. Your thoughts on character building, the necessity to insist ethical, rational attributes in today's millennials has helped us to reflect on our curriculum and teaching pedagogies that we practice. Dr. Jeevan, we are deeply grateful to you for your efforts in simplifying the National Education Policy 2020. Sir, you have guided us to comprehend the new policy and its nuances in a structured and at an elementary level. I now request Ms. Chaitanya Grace to formally express our gratitude.
That's enough, Sushma.
A very good afternoon to all. I, Chaitanya Grace, on behalf of Indian Academy Degree College Autonomous, take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt gratitude to one and all present here. The roots of all goodness lie in the soil of appreciation, Dalai Lama. With this, I would like to extend my deep sense of appreciation to our chairman, Dr. T. Somsekhar, Secretary, Ms. T. Bharati, Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Srinidhi K. Parthasarathy, and our principal, Dr. Jerome Xavier, for having been our pillars of strength throughout. We are grateful to our resource person, Dr. Jeevan Kumar from Bangalore University, for sharing his knowledge on National Education Policy 2020 and for enlightening us on the same. Thank you, sir. It was indeed a wonderful session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I further thank and appreciate all the faculty.
Oh, you're most welcome, Dr. Jerome. Anytime.
I further thank and appreciate all the faculty members of Indian Academy Group of Institutions, faculty of the team Paramarsh, all our fellow faculty members and participants from various colleges for being a part of today's program. I also thank the technical team for their support. And lastly, my heartfelt gratitude to our members of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell for organizing and making this webinar a successful one. Thank you, sir. Thank you, one and all. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Chaitanya Grace. Participants, kindly note the feedback link is posted in the chat box. It is open for the next half an hour. Kindly finish it by then. Participants, please have a look at the chat box for the feedback link. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeevan Kumar.
Oh, once again, thank you. I enjoyed myself. It's a pity I couldn't come to a lovely college.
Thank you.
Pity I couldn't come to a lovely college.
I'll send you the formal note of gratitude and talk to you later.
Okay, Dr. Jerome. No need to be so formal, but let's be in touch. Let's be in touch. Thank you. Can I sign out?